Harvard Medical School did a study where they took participants, asked them to play Tetris for multiple hours for 3 days in a row. And the days that followed after these 3 days of playing, participants dreamed and saw geometric shapes falling from the sky all around them. So this research is important because it tells us about cognitive after imaging. Our brains easily get stuck into patterns of the way we view the world. So we need to think about how this impacts the notion of resilience. So let's first take a look at what happens if that after imaging is negative, when there's a pattern that decreases overall success, that you end up, whatever you do on an ongoing basis, like your job, and you take that and you superimpose that on other things that you do. The quality assurance auditor who finds defects at home, the food critic who criticizes the home cook, the lawyer who cross-examines her children at home. What's the impact of that after imaging? What about the positive effects of a Tetris effect? When you scan for and focus on the positive, what happens when you look for happy, when you look for gratitude, when you look for optimism? Let's look at each of those individually. So what about happiness? It turns out that happiness breeds happiness. It's contagious. When people around you are happy, you're happier. You end up seeing what you're listening to, and other people will do the same from you. Gratitude. Robert Emmons has studied gratitude and has found that grateful people are more energetic, more emotionally intelligent, more forgiving and less depressed and anxious and lonely. Gratitude leads to positive outcomes. Take a look at some of the thoughts that Robert Emmons has. Optimism. The research that's been done on optimism shows that it's a predictor of work performance. People who are optimistic cope better with obstacles and stress. And we all know that on a daily basis, we find obstacles and stress in our world. Question is how do we respond? We know that our beliefs lead us to the patterns that we fall into on a daily basis. And what we do on a daily basis create our habits. So what about our habits? So now activate the Tetris effect. Make a list on a daily basis of 3 good things in your life that have occurred. This activity causes your brain to think about the last 24 hours, looking for positive things. Spend 5 minutes to train your brain to notice and focus on possibilities. Look for growth potential and opportunities. Since you're only going to focus on the good things that happened, that's going to be pushing away the negative things. The more good things that you begin to see, the more good things that you discover, and ultimately, the more good things that are there. Now that you've finished this activity, you might be wondering, how many positive ideas does it take to negate one negative one? The Losada line, as well as positivity ratio and the Gottman ratio, took a look at this and found that it takes 3 positives to counteract 1 negative. So think long and hard before you give negative feedback. and realize that the more positives you give to a coworker or to a friend, the more they'll flourish. Some of our habits can be traced back to a belief that Richard Wiseman calls luck. He says there are 4 principles. The first is to maximize chance, that we'll network, we're open to new experiences. A second principle is that we listen to our hunches. We believe in our gut. A third are our expectations, that we're optimistic. And the fourth is that we turn it around. We look at what's happened and we think, how could this be worse? Richard Wiseman didn't just think about this, he did experiments. And he took people who said they either were lucky or unlucky, gave them a newspaper to look at, and said, when you're looking at the newspaper, count the number of pictures. The people who felt that they were unlucky didn't notice that on the second page there was a notice that said, there are 3 pictures in this newspaper. Also, at the middle of the newspaper, there was an article that said, stop counting, tell the experimenter that you've seen this, and you'll win $250. The people who felt they were unlucky missed both of those. The people who felt they were lucky ended up seeing either that first notice that said there were 3, or the notice that said, get $250.